Good morning, listeners of Hot Topic and Fresh News. Today is the 13th of December, 2023, and we are here with another daily dose of top news stories. Today's main headline: Florida Governor Ron DeSantis throws a series of attacks on former President Donald Trump during a CNN Republican town hall in Iowa. DeSantis criticizes Trump for various issues, including the inflation woes under President Joe Biden, the unfinished border wall, and the absence of a Republican alternative for Obamacare. In other news, DeSantis defends Florida's controversial law banning most abortions after 6 weeks and takes aim at Trump for wavering on the right to life. On foreign policy, DeSantis counters Biden's statement on Israel, arguing against a two-state solution until certain groups recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. With regards to healthcare and Social Security, DeSantis criticizes Trump for failing to provide a replacement for the Affordable Care Act. However, the Florida governor remains tight-lipped about his own healthcare plan, promising to release more details later in the election season. DeSantis' claims during the town hall have been subject to fact-checking. He states that life expectancy is falling in the U.S. and blames Congress for the financial issues of Social Security. He also claims that grocery prices have increased dramatically. However, data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics contradicts this. In response, the Biden campaign has called out DeSantis for his signature rant and scare tactics, accusing him of neglecting middle-class families. Meanwhile, DeSantis refuses to follow in Trump's footsteps by criticizing New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu for endorsing Nikki Haley. Finally, DeSantis questions the Trump administration's decision to grant the Satanic Temple religious classification under IRS in 2019. He states that he does not believe the organization aligns with the religious intentions of the Founding Fathers. That's all for the headlines. Stay tuned for an in-depth discussion on these pressing stories. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Emily.
And you're joined by David today.
We're here to bring you the latest on Hot Topic and Fresh News. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You don't want to miss our daily episodes. Straight to the hot topics. The spark between Governor DeSantis and former President Trump is really heating up. In a recent town hall at Grandview University in Des Moines, Iowa, DeSantis took every opportunity to contrast his record as governor with Trump's presidential tenure. From the start, DeSantis came out swinging, blaming Trump for the country's current inflation issues under President Biden, and even for some of Trump's actions at the onset of the COVID pandemic.
That's interesting. It seems he's trying to close the polling gap in Iowa. What do you think his main criticisms of Trump were?
During the town hall, DeSantis launched as many as 8 attacks on Trump. Among these, he criticized Trump for failing to complete the wall at the U.S.-Mexico border, as he had promised in his 2016 campaign. In addition, DeSantis called out Trump for his lack of a Republican alternative to Obamacare. He also notably took issue with Trump's criticism of Florida's new 6-week abortion ban.
Now, I've heard that DeSantis has faced criticism within the GOP for that ban. How did he address that during the town hall?
Yes, that's correct. DeSantis has been under fire for signing into law a measure that bans most abortions after about 6 weeks. However, during the town hall, he defended the law, arguing that it includes exceptions for situations like fatal fetal defects. He also accused Trump of flip-flopping on this right-to-life issue.
A lot of direct attacks indeed. It's clear that DeSantis is not shying away from challenging Trump. I wonder how this will play out as we approach the state's caucuses, which are less than 5 weeks away.
Time will tell indeed. This town hall marked a notable escalation in DeSantis' direct confrontations with Trump. It's going to be interesting to watch how this rivalry develops as we get closer to the caucuses. DeSantis did not just focus on domestic politics during the town hall. He also voiced his disagreement with President Biden's stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Earlier, Biden had indicated that Israel's international support for its campaign against Hamas was dwindling due to heavy bombardment of Gaza. He also claimed that the current Israeli government doesn't want a two-state solution. a concept that envisions a Palestinian state existing side by side with Israel.
Interesting. And what was DeSantis' reaction to that?
DeSantis disputed Biden's viewpoint, suggesting a two-state solution wouldn't work because he believes certain groups are more fixated on destroying Israel than pursuing their own state. According to him, a solution hasn't been achieved due to the refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state.
Quite a take. And what about domestic issues?
Well, he also brought up some of his views on domestic issues like Obamacare and Social Security. While he criticized Trump for not establishing a replacement for the Affordable Care Act, his own plan remains undefined. He assured he'll reveal his health care plan later in the election season. As for Social Security, he avoided specific plans to preserve its longevity, even though he criticized Haley's position on reforming it.
That seems like a lot of deflection on his part. I'm curious to see how these positions will evolve as the election season progresses.
Absolutely. It's clear DeSantis is using this time to distinguish himself and his policies. We'll have to keep an eye out for more developments.
So, in the course of the town hall, DeSantis brought up the issue of life expectancy, stating that it's declining in America. Is that accurate?
Yes, DeSantis did mention that, and while it's partially true, it needs some context. Life expectancy indeed suffered significant drops during the first 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it started to rebound in 2022, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Still, it remains lower than it has been in about 20 years.
And how much has it rebounded?
Provisional data from the CDC shows that life expectancy at birth rose by 1.1 years to 77.5 years in 2022. However, it still does not offset the 2.4 years of life lost in the earlier years of the pandemic.
That's quite an issue. Now moving on, DeSantis also had something to say about Social Security, didn't he?
Yes, he did. DeSantis accused Congress of causing Social Security's financial difficulties by taking money from the fund for decades.
Is there any truth to that claim?
Well, it's not entirely accurate. While the federal government has borrowed from Social Security, that's not the main culprit behind the program's looming insolvency. The primary issue is demographic. There aren't enough workers to support the growing number of Social Security beneficiaries.
To be honest, I didn't quite get that. Could you explain that in a different way?
Sure, let's put it this way. Imagine Social Security as a savings account where workers deposit money throughout their careers. Once they retire, they start withdrawing that money. Now, if there are fewer people depositing and more people withdrawing, the savings account can eventually run dry. That's the situation Social Security is facing right now. The number of retirees is growing, but there aren't enough current workers making deposits into the system. So, it's not just about the government borrowing from the fund, it's about the balance of people paying in and people taking out.
Let's delve further into the issue of Social Security. What could be the implications if this financial instability isn't addressed?
If the Social Security Trust Fund runs dry, beneficiaries could face a 23% cut in benefits. This isn't a simple issue. It's about the welfare of our senior citizens who've worked all their lives and now rely on these funds.
Quite alarming. Changes should certainly be made to ensure the longevity of the program. Now, what else stood out from DeSantis' town hall?
DeSantis seemed to be using this town hall as an opportunity to distinguish himself from Trump. He has been in a race with former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley to become the party's primary alternative to Trump. He consistently compared his own record as governor to that of Trump.
Interesting strategy. Now, there was also the claim DeSantis made about rescuing people in Israel after an attack by Hamas. Could you shed some light on that?
DeSantis claimed that he had to step in and rescue people in Israel following an attack by Hamas because, according to him, the U.S. State Department and embassy in Israel weren't providing help. However, this claim is both untrue and needs context. The fact is, the U.S. government started arranging charter flights to evacuate Americans from Israel soon after the attack.
Sounds like there's a bit of political posturing going on there. It's a reminder that it's always important for us to fact-check these claims. That rescue claim by Desantis, what did he actually do in response to the attack in Israel?
After declaring a state of emergency in Florida, Desantis managed to access a fund of $25 million without requiring legislative approval to evacuate people from Israel to Tampa. However, his efforts came after the U.S. government had already started arranging charter flights.
Seems like the timing of his actions should be noted. Switching gears, what has been the response to DeSantis' performance at the town hall?
The Biden campaign has criticized DeSantis' performance, labeling it as his signature rant and scare tactics. They've accused him of offering no real solutions to issues that matter to Americans.
And what's been said about DeSantis' relationship with Trump?
Interestingly, the Biden campaign refers to Trump as DeSantis' frenemy. They claim that both DeSantis and Trump share a common stance, a lack of concern for middle-class families.
That's a strong statement. Now, DeSantis made a claim about grocery prices. What's the truth there?
DeSantis claimed that grocery prices have skyrocketed anywhere from 50% to 100%. However, this isn't accurate. While food prices have risen, they haven't risen to the extent that DeSantis claims. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports a 2.9% increase for the year ended in November. Since November 2019, food prices have risen 26%.
You know, I've never really considered the full implications of those rising food costs before. It's certainly another stressor for families trying to make ends meet. There's a lot to unpack from DeSantis' statements. How did he react to New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu endorsing Nikki Haley?
DeSantis had a measured response to Sununu's endorsement of Haley. He said he wasn't going to criticize Sununu for his decision, while subtly hinting at Donald Trump, who's known to lash out at those who don't endorse him.
And his comments on Haley's funding.
DeSantis criticized Haley for receiving funds from figures he described as liberal Democrats, specifically calling out Reid Hoffman, the CEO of LinkedIn, and Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. He expressed concern that such individuals do not want to see conservative change in the country.
There was also something about a proposal on social media verification, right?
Yes, Haley proposed a requirement for name verification on social media. DeSantis disagreed, calling it dangerous and unconstitutional. He argued that conservatives have been singled out for expressing opinions on social media, and that this could put them at further risk.
Finally, DeSantis had some words about a particular decision by Trump's administration. Could you shed some light on that?
Indeed, DeSantis criticized Trump's administration for granting the Satanic Temple religious classification under the IRS back in 2019. He expressed surprise at this move.
What's the latest about the Satanic Temple's status in Iowa?
It's creating a stir. The group has erected a satanic holiday display in the state capitol, prompting some Republicans to call for its removal.
How does DeSantis connect this with the Trump administration's decision?
DeSantis believes that the religious classification granted to the Satanic Temple by the Trump administration potentially gave the group a legal basis for their actions. He insists, though, that this is not the type of religion the Founding Fathers had in mind.
And how might this have played out differently in Florida?
DeSantis suggests that in Florida, the display probably wouldn't have been allowed to go up, indicating a different approach to religious freedom or what counts as a religion. That's a wrap for today's episode of Hot Topic and Fresh News, where we delved into some intriguing political developments. Thank you all for listening in. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And if you find our conversations as engaging as we do, don't hesitate to share our podcast with your friends, family, and fellow news enthusiasts. We love hearing your thoughts, so please leave a comment.
Absolutely. And remember, we're here every day, bringing you the sharp analysis and insightful conversation you need to stay informed. And oh, just a little teaser, we've got some really exciting content lined up. You wouldn't want to miss out.
Once again, thank you for tuning in. We're already looking forward to our next episode. Stay in the loop, keep your eyes on the news. Our channel's content will amuse.